Okay, so welcome to today's episode. We're going to go through the first tool that is under the category of study. So to date, we've gone through the story of Jake's journey, Jake's process of learning and applying the 7 strategies. And now in section 3 of the book, we're covering this game day toolbox. And today I'm going to take you through one exercise that's going to help you prepare for the written test, also help you to get the necessary knowledge to be the most effective at that promotion you're looking to take. If you don't have it, get a copy of the promotion playbook on Amazon. You can buy it now, or check out promotionplaybook.com. You can find out more information. So the game day toolbox it's separated into 4 different skill sets. There's 4 categories of tools that we're going to cover. Those 4 categories are study, speak, write, and apply. Study skills, speaking skills, writing skills, and application skills. So all of the tools inside of the toolbox you'll find here. The first one we're going to cover, so the first category is study skills. These are the skills that are designed to enhance your knowledge and for the position, for the test, and so that you can get through that written test if that's part of your assessment. So today's tool is called the 7 preparation tips for the written test. There's this emphasis here about these 7 different tips, is that it is extremely critical to be prepared for the written test. A lot of times I see guys that get ready for a promotional test and they'll spend a ton of time doing like size ups or going through these big, crazy emergency incidents that could happen, such as a vehicle fire that catches a house on fire, that then catches a commercial structure on fire, and then an airplane crashes, and you have to somehow manage this big, giant, highly stressful situation where lives are at risk. There's a lot of values that are at risk, and things like that. That is important. That being said, that's not the main emphasis so you could be the best at running emergency scenes. You could be the best at commanding your crew. You could be the best informal leader. But if you fail the written test, in many assessment centers, failing the written test will take you out of the process. So many times a written test is a pass-fail option. You either pass it and you move on, or you fail it and you don't move on. So even if you're the best, if you don't get through the gate of this written test, it's not going to matter in terms of you being successful with the promotion. So, and even on a lot of processes that it's not pass-fail, many times it still carries a lot of weight in your overall score. So don't overlook the importance of the written test. It's not as exciting. It's not as, not as sexy or appealing as some of these bigger parts of being able to run a big emergency incident or lead your crew or these other things, but it is really, really important. So tip number 1 is read the books and policy cover to cover several times. Many people make the mistake, myself included. In the past, I made the mistake of thinking that I could get by without reading the book. I was like, well, I'll buy the audiobook and then I'm just gonna get a study guide and I'll breeze through it, and I feel pretty good about that. That was a big error. What I learned was that if you know everything that's within the books that you're required to read, and you know the policies as well as possible, you're going to do well on that written test. There's nothing that they're going to give you. Typically, there's not anything that they're going to give you that's not in the books or the policies that are on the required reading list. Usually with the test announcement, they give you a list of what's going to be on the test so you know what to study. Don't compromise going through these. There's tremendous value in going through these, reading it in its entirety, and then going back and using the audiobooks, the study guides, the flashcards. All this other stuff is helpful, but tip number 1 is read the book and policy, read it cover to cover several times. Don't just look at the pictures and highlight it. Next one is don't prepare alone. So this goes back to strategy number 2, is that you build your team intentionally. Part of that team is that you get a study buddy or a partner that you pair up with that hopefully is taking that test with you. And so you can refine and compete and push each other to reach your best. Studying as a group, or at least with one other person, it's a lot easier to comprehend and to retain the information than just sitting and reading by yourself. If you go back to the first tip, is that reading by yourself, there's a time and place for just getting through the book. But once you do that, it's good to have a partner because you can bounce stuff off of each other. You can test each other, and it's good accountability and helps you to learn better, to share it and to comprehend it in different forms other than just reading. Number 3 is don't learn it, teach it. So one of the fastest ways to comprehend information is to teach it and to share it. So some ideas that go with tip number 3 is that you can share it on social media. You can record a video or audio recording like I'm doing now. You can record it and you can share it publicly, or you can just record it just for the sake of recording it. When you read something for the sake of teaching it, you pay a lot more attention to it and you're much more engaged with the material if you're just reading it to get through a chapter. So when you learn to teach, you have to be able to retain it and then also share it and speak it, not just intake it. So you can share it with your family. A lot of times if you have kids, or if you're married, or you just have a boyfriend or girlfriend that you're close with, you might want to learn something and be like, hey, do you mind if I just share this with you? I'd like to teach it and share it with you. And then leverage your family and friends. So that's kind of the same as that. It's really, you can see if you do have young kids at home, or whatever your home situation is like, you'd be surprised at how often your kids or maybe your spouse would be interested in participating in some of this stuff with you. I know, you could be at home and you could see your kids as a distraction because they're running around the house and causing a muck, and you need to study for this test. Or you could just create it and make it fun and say, hey guys, let's play a game. And you could set it up like a Jeopardy, or you can make a card game out of it or something, so that it's this interactive process. And there's no reason that the studying and this learning process has to be a long, drawn out, painful thing. It can be an enjoyable process. There's a piece of it that you're just gonna have to grind out and get through. That being said, the more you can engage your family and friends and make it fun, the better off you're gonna be, and the more you're gonna enjoy the process. So that's still number 3, which is don't just learn it, teach it. Number 4 is to use repetition. The more repetition is really one of the best ways that we learn. We get stuff integrated into us through repetition and also through an emotional connection. So if you can create a strong emotional connection, you're more likely to retain the information. And the other one is just repetition, 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 repetition. So get used to repeatedly going over things. Even when you think you know it, it kind of goes back to that saying, is that amateurs practice till they get it right. Professionals practice until they cannot get it wrong. And so you just do the fundamentals over and over and over till you know when it's a high stress situation, you don't rise to the situation, you fall to your lowest, the level of your training. So instead of rising to the situation, you're going to fall to your level of training and preparation. So hopefully that's a high level, that you train at that highest level. So when the heat is on, the pressure is on, and when it counts, it's something that you've done multiple times over and over. Number 5 is use rewards to keep you motivated. So there is an element of studying that can be tedious and it can be a lot of work. So make sure that you're rewarding yourself in the process. For me, if I'm studying, something I reward myself with is I enjoy having a good cup of coffee, because I enjoy the coffee, and then it kind of stimulates my mind, and then I can study and enjoy it. Or sometimes if I'm preparing for a test, I might set up some type of incentive so that if I stick to my plan for the week, then I get to treat myself to a meal out, or maybe I go buy something that I normally wouldn't buy, or some type of cake or candy, or take the kids out for Sundays, whatever. Find something that's going to motivate you, and reward yourself in the process. This goes back to strategy number 7, celebrate the peak, is that integrate celebration into your study. Because the more you enjoy it, the more emotionally connected you can be towards your training plan, the easier it will be to do it. If you absolutely hate studying and you never want to do it, willpower is only going to get you so far. So you kind of have to work to get your somehow find some joy and enjoyment in the process. So number 6 is use various resources to learn, yet not as a substitute for learning. So this goes back to the first one, is that there is not a substitute for spending the time to really understand the content. And I encourage you to read it in its entirety at least once, if not several times, of reading it cover to cover. That being said, once you've done that, then there's a ton of great study guides, flashcards, audiobooks, videos, phone apps, many other things are a great way to supplement this, to help retain that information. And number 7 is make use of all the time you have. This goes back to making your training plan, which is strategy number 4, is that a lot of times people say, oh, I just don't have the time. How am I going to find the time? I don't have the time to prepare for this test. And if you take a log of all the time that you have, so like a good example for this would be if you just take the next week and every day write out what you've done every hour of the day. For most people, there's like studies that say most people watch TV like 2 to 5 hours per day, or you end up a lot of fire stations, you'll sit around and have coffee talk for an hour plus. You might go out shopping, you might do a lot of these activities, which can be good activities, but not if you're compromising your training plan, and if those activities are taken away from you showing up on test day as your best self. So take an inventory of your time, and studying does not have to be confined to just sitting at a desk by yourself away from everybody else. Find creative ways to make it possible. So find creative ways to study as often as possible. You can go out for a walk and maybe bring some flashcards with you. If you go and walk with your spouse or a friend or a family member, if you're on a long drive, you could do it. If you have some projects to do around the house, while you're doing these projects, maybe you would listen to an audio. Like I've got these AirPods here. I could pre-record some of my tests, or I could pre-record some of the test answers, the test questions, maybe listen to it, or I could get a study guide that's already ready, or an audio version. It's called there's a saying called net time, NET, and that stands for no net time, no extra time, I think is what that stands for. But basically, how can you titrate this material into things that you're doing already? If you have a long drive, how can you listen to an audiobook, or maybe facilitate a discussion? If you're on an ambulance and you get a long transport, maybe as you're driving back from that transport, you could just share some flashcards or a quiz, do some quizzes with the other person in the ambulance or fire engine. So make use of all the time that you have. You have the time. It's just a matter of directing your focus towards being best prepared. So these are the 7 tips. I'll cover them one more time and that'll be the end of this video. So number 1 is read the books and policies cover to cover several times. Number 2 is don't prepare alone. Number 3, don't just learn it, teach it. And a number of ways that you can do that. Number 4 is use repetition. Number 4 is use repetition. Number 4 is use repetition. Number 5, use rewards to keep you motivated. Number 6, use various resources to learn, yet not as a substitute for the reading. So use those other sources. And number 7 is make use of all the time that you have and be flexible with your approach. Thanks for watching. This is part of the study skill. So if there's a few other tools that will help you study. And I appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, comments, I appreciate that. And if you haven't got the book yet, check out the Promotion Playbook on Amazon or promotionplaybook.com. Thank you.